little hand says it's time to rock and roll. Let's get it. Gridiron 360 back on the mics. I'm Bill. Got Dave with me. What's happening?
What's up, buddy?
Thank y'all for listening. We are Thanksgiving weeking. Just coming off of Monday Night Football. It is Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We're going to give you a little recap of Week 12 in the NFL. And we're going to start with the games of the week that we want to touch on, spend a little time on a few of them, and then dive right in to the segment that is sweeping the nation, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's get it started.
Yeah, interesting week this week, man. We saw a lot of action.
Yep. Really last week, coming off of last week, I looked at those teams, quote-unquote, in the hunt for the playoff. And now after this week, that whole picture has changed in my mind, and really kind of the teams at the top solidifying themselves even more for the most part.
Yep.
Raiders travel across country to take on the New York Jets. Now, Mr. Dave.
Yep.
You say so often it's one of your kind of mantras that you always say in the NFL. Very hard to travel from one coast to the other and
particularly west to east with a 1 o'clock is the ultimate bugaboo.
And the weather wasn't great.
Nope.
And the Oakland Raiders, who were sitting at 6-4 with those in the hunt hopes.
Well, fact is, if they would have won that game, season-wise, record-wise, they would have been in first place with the Chiefs.
It was still a game to come between those two teams, but unfortunately, the New York Jets, I guess, maybe found something, but I can tell you this, the Oakland Raiders couldn't find a thing. Gruden in the postgame was basically like, we couldn't do anything. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. We couldn't do this. We couldn't do that. And so Oakland, which seemed to be a team on the rise, rolls out to MetLife in New York and gets shellacked by the 3-7 New York Jets, 34-3.
Yeah,
making the Jets now 4-7 and drops the Raiders to 6-5 and really starts to leave them no room for error at all if they have a shot at all.
Yeah, that division is struggling. You know, you would have thought coming into this season, certainly that the Chiefs were going to be front runners. Even if their offense took somewhat of a step back, you would have thought they would have been able to make some moves. They've struggled really before Mahomes' injury, at least the injury with the kneecap. His original injury was the ankle in the first game.
Right.
But they seemed to get it going, but then had kind of a rough showing in a win against the Lions, and then didn't look good. Then he got hurt. They had some tough matchups, which they played pretty well. Like, it's like their defense kind of showed up and kind of is good for that defense during that time, but not good enough to win. And then now their offense is, getting going with Mahomes, and they're still not doing well. So here's the Raiders kind of surging a little bit, and here it is. Waller has disappeared for the last 4 weeks.
Disappeared.
Teams have really tried to shut him down.
Hunter
horrible
Renfrow
news
got a
on.
concussion.
No, Hunter Renfrow also broke his rib and has a punctured lung.
Yeah, that was what it was. It wasn't concussion.
Yeah, he's out for a while.
Yep, it was a rib and a lung. Sorry.
So that's no good because that was one of those guys that was coming on. David Carr's been steady.
Derek Carr.
Derek, damn if I don't always do that.
Every week. Derek Carr goes 15-27, only 127 yards, no TDs, one pick.
If you want to know how bad things are, you got replaced by the giraffe.
Yeah,
that just tells you.
He ended up getting benched because Gruden had it. The offense was doing nothing. Yep. The game starts out. They each get a field goal in the first quarter, and then the Jets continued to play football, and the Raiders didn't, and the Jets never looked back. Sam Darnold with a pretty darn good day, 20-29, 315, no picks, 2 TDs. It's not bad. Le'Veon Bell didn't do diddly squat and still hasn't all year. But, we're seeing a little something out of Darnold. I don't know if it's the consistency is what I need to see. And for the past couple weeks, he's been pretty consistent. Will that continue? If it does, then, I mean, good for the Jets. They need to not be a dumpster fire, and they need a quarterback.
Yeah, but I give him a lot of credit because the fact is he came back and is playing a little bit better now in the last couple of games, and Le'Veon Bell is still nowhere to be found. So he's not getting that protection from the running game. Impressed with, I mean, they've got really who's not who of receivers.
Yeah, right.
And yet the guys go out and perform. You know, you got guys, you know, like Jamison Crowder that'll show up, and he didn't have a big game this game.
No,
it was
Robbie
Anderson was a little better.
He hasn't done anything all year, Robbie Anderson, but 4 for 86 in the TD.
Yeah, and I mean, and there was. I didn't even know this guy was still in the NFL. Braxton Berrios. Remember him from
the
his
old
Miami days?
guy had a big catch, 69 yards.
Yeah, Demaryius Thomas showed up a little bit. He had a touchdown pass that was called back.
Yeah.
But I mean,
tight end Ryan Griffin, who they just extended his contract, has scored in, I think, about 3 of the last 4 weeks. This would make 4 of the last 5. Even one of those, I think, with multiple touchdown.
Yeah, he's not getting big receiving yards, but clearly is in favor in the red zone.
Yep.
Big guy for them in the red zone. So, you know, I mean, the simple fact is a bad look on the Raiders, and we're going to have to see how they respond from this because, like you said, there's not a lot of room for error here.
No.
So who else we got going on?
Let's go to the next game, which was probably the biggest of the day, or at least the one we talked about in the preview, and that was the Colts traveling to Houston. Houston coming off of a terrible loss to Baltimore on the road, and prior to that they were in London where they beat the Jaguars. They come into this game tied with a 6-4 record with the Colts, and the Colts actually have a leg up because they won the head-to-head when they played earlier in the year. So this was a must-win, really, for the Texans, not just to have a shot at winning that division, but to keep pace, as well as to keep pace in the wild card race should they not get it. I expected them to get them to right the ship, and they did. Now, it was a little tougher of a game than I expected. You know, games like these, I expect Deshaun Watson to come back and really perform. Had an okay day, 19 for 30, 298 yards, 1 pick, but he had 2 TDs. Only ran the ball 3 times for 10 yards, so that wasn't a huge factor in the game, and usually isn't. He only does it when you know things break down and he sees the opening.
I think the key with him is always going to be keep him clean. They win when they keep him clean. They kept him clean. It wasn't a perfect performance by any stretch of the imagination. Definitely solid, though. I mean, the 1 pick is the blemish, and then he had a fumble, so he had 2 turnovers. So, but I mean, just seeing their offense go, I think what we're really finding out with the Colts, I'm not down on Jacoby Brissett, but some questions got to start getting answered because he's had some games where he's been off. I mean, he was over 60% passing, but only 129 yards. Certainly
no
having
TDs, no picks.
Well, having T.Y. Hilton not on a pitch count is not helpful for them. Eric Ebron was a guy that got hurt. He's now out for the year because he's got to have, I guess both of his ankles are messed up.
Yeah.
So he's going to have surgery on that. So, I mean, I will say they had a nice return of a running game, considering that they're going to be without Marlon Mack for a while. Jonathan Williams, his second week in a row, put up 104 yards on 26 carries and had a touchdown. So they did get that help. I think that's the most alarming thing with Brissett. You know, I get their issues at receiver, but it really – I just feel like there is more vertical opportunity with this team. Again, T.Y. was still on a pitch count, but he had the most targets.
Yeah, I know, and he had 2 that he dropped that were longer. You know, I have him in all my fantasy teams. I played him in 2 of the 3. I had him sitting out. Then the news came that he was good to go, that he was probably good to go last week, but he just wanted to be sure, so I thought for sure he was back to full blow. But no, it was a pitch count. Didn't work out for me so well. Wish he would have caught one of those 2 other balls that he dropped that were longer. But they definitely need to get him back in the fold, have them involved so they can be effective. You know, I will say, though, I mean, look, this is pretty high-powered. I know that Baltimore held Houston down, but Houston's defense isn't good, and that's going to be a struggle for them as they move into the postseason if they get there. But their offense typically is pretty high-powered. DeAndre Hopkins had a great day. Will Fuller had a great day. Nuke went 6 receptions, 94 yards, 2 TDs. Fuller had 7 receptions for 140 yards, no TDs. But still, 20 points isn't a juggernaut. And I credit the Colts defense there in really being able to slow down the high-powered offense of Houston. And moving forward in this division, like I said, Houston has really got an issue they need to figure out on defense if they're going to try to do anything going towards and in the postseason. Whereas the Colts, might need to figure some things out on offense, but
they got to get consistent on either running or passing. One of them's got to get consistent.
Look, Frank Reich, we agree that he's a good coach. He's done a great job, and I think he'll get it right. And the fact that their defense is still, they're not phenomenal, but they're not bad. They're stingy, very stingy, and that in my mind, I know Brissett needs to get on pace, and I love Deshaun Watson and I love Nuke. They're my Clemson guys, but the Colts are set up better right now for the postseason.
Yeah, I think, again, we talk about it. There's all this offensive explosion. Defense still wins championships, which means when the money games are on the line. What is really cool about this division, none of these teams, whoever wins this division, it just realistically are not going to be a top 1 or 2 seed. So the division win is going to be very important. Understand, going into next week, you've got 3 teams all within 1 game of each other, and the leader is the Texans, but they have to go and play the Patriots next week. They get them at home, fortunately. But then you also have the Colts and the Titans, who are also 6-5, having to play each other too as well. So this division's going to get a little crazy, and it's going to probably stay crazy down to the very end. Again, and I think it might be division winner. His only shot is to win, to get in the playoffs, is to win that division. So it could get pretty interesting. Now the Colts and Texans are done on their end, so it'll be kind of up to some other divisional play. The Texans still have to play the Titans one more time, so it'll be very interesting coming down to the wire. Flawed teams, but at the same time, there's some things to really like about each one of these teams. It's just a matter of who can exploit their strengths and cover their weaknesses. I agree with you about the Colts, though. I got to tell you, and all that being said, though, the Titans are right there. They can play defense, too, and they can run the ball. And if you can do that in the playoffs.
Found something with Tannehill at the helm.
Yeah, I agree. So interesting. Now, so what do we got next?
All right, the next game is the Seahawks. Again, a West Coast team traveling east to play a 1 o'clock game at the Link in Philadelphia against the Eagles. Eagles came into this game at 5-5, fighting with the Cowboys, who had to play the Patriots later in the day in Foxborough. And so they're fighting with Dallas for the NFC East. And the Seahawks come in at 8-2, nipping at the heels of the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep. Right now, they have the tiebreaker. They are a game behind. You could start either way on this. I guess the simplest thing is I want to talk about the guy that to me is the star of this whole game, as he always is Russell Wilson. Again, you're not going to get all giddy about his stat line every week, but I will tell you, that dude wins.
Yep.
The dude wins. And when they need him most, he shows up. Where on the other side of the ball, you've got a guy that played a great season, regular season, to get the Eagles to the Super Bowl, but didn't finish the deal. That's the guy in Jacksonville. Struggled with injuries, and now he's inconsistent. I mean, this is one of his bigger yard-producing games. He was 33 of 45, not terrible. Pretty good there. 256, okay. But 1 TD and 2 picks. Wentz is the anti-Russell Wilson in my mind. He's proven that he's not a gamer.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because, again, we had this discussion, probably 3 weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago, about they aren't who we thought they were. Man, I'll tell you, some of these quarterback draft classes are starting to leak heavy. Remember, this is number 2 pick. Talk about Trubisky, a number 2 pick. Talk about, we will in a minute, about Jared Goff. I mean, just some ugliness at quarterback. We already have the Marcus Mariota and the Jameis Winston 1 and 2 dying a death this year. So, again, this to me was, when all else fails, it is Russell Wilson, though I will say Rashad Penny. How about that kid? I mean, he's been irrelevant for a long time.
Carson lost 2 fumbles in the game. And since then, Pete Carroll's come out, the head coach of the Seahawks, and said, it's not going to necessarily, damage him moving forward. He's a big part of their team, and he's a big part of why they're where they are. But those 2 fumbles led to Rashad Penny getting an opportunity, and he hasn't really exploited those opportunities. But he did this time, and he had how long was that run? He had like a 50, 60-yard run. 58-yard run, yeah.
And it was a good run, breaking some tackles, which is not kind of his MO usually.
Overall, he had 14 carries for $129 and a TD. Chris Carson only got 8 carries. The game started with Russ coming out and hitting a deep ball to Tyler Lockett. They score a touchdown, and the Eagles match it with a field goal. The Seahawks got another field goal in the second, go into half 10-3. Nobody scored in the third. And then it came down to the fourth where the Eagles got a couple field goals to try to cut into the lead, 10-9. And then the Seahawks put another touchdown on the board and pushed the lead 17-9, and it ended 17-9 Seahawks. But you're right. I mean, like, from the Eagles side of the ball, I don't know what's going on with Wentz. Jordan Howard's still hurt. Alshon Jeffrey was out. Zach Ertz has come on the past few weeks. We know that he is the target for Carson Wentz. He's his favorite target. He went 12 for 91 and a TD. But it's obvious that the tight ends in general are the target because Goddard also had 7 catches for 32 yards. And those 2 guys led all the receivers. So, yeah, I mean, it's the receivers aren't doing anything. The tight ends are. The running game isn't doing anything for Philly. The quarterback's not doing anything. It's just not a good recipe. And, God, the NFC East is just not great. It's just not great. But the Seahawks come out of this thing with a win. They go to 9-2. Next week they get to travel home to take on the Vikings. So that's not an easy matchup necessarily. And for the Eagles, they'll travel down to Miami to take on the Dolphins, which should be a W for them to get them back on track. But yeah, I think the Seahawks are continuing to do what they do. It wasn't flashy. A little something on their defense that's left to be desired. They're not that staunch defense, and I know they brought Jadeveon Clowney over. He needs to be more impactful, especially moving towards and into the postseason for that defense to be a little bit better. But yeah, they're getting it done. I think that they're a great team. Russell Wilson, like you said from the top, he is a gamer. He just wins. So, good talk. Let's move on to the next game, shall we? NFC South foes. The Carolina Panthers travel down to the Superdome in New Orleans, take on the Saints. We got, if any team's close to the Saints in the NFC South, it's the Panthers. The Panthers come into this thing at 5-5. The Saints come in at 8-2. It's a definite long shot, but they're the closest in the division, and they will get to play one more time. Last game of the year, the Saints and the Panthers. All right, so Carolina, New Orleans, what do you think, buddy? What do you think?
Well, it didn't quite play out like I thought it would. I really thought the Saints would kind of go for the kill here. But I got to give Carolina credit. I mean, McCaffrey still just does his thing. I mean, he only had 100 and I can't believe I'm saying only 100 and roughly 30 all-purpose yards, but of course got in the end zone twice.
3 times.
Twice. Kyle Allen, very, very good game, a good rebound game. Again, we were kind of worried because he had a couple of interception-prone games of 2 of the last 3. He really showed up in this game.
DJ Moore has been, despite all the production you get out of Christian McCaffrey, he has been really, really a solid receiver for them. And that's something I feel they haven't had since Steve Smith.
Yeah, well, a huge thing in this game that didn't happen until I believe it was either the day before or the day of was the announcement that Lattimore wasn't going to play.
Yes.
So that was certainly a big
but he's been doing it every week. I mean, he's
been
putting up numbers every week, DJ Moore.
But that helps him tremendously against this defense. So, I mean, again, the Saints still score. There's this guy, Michael Thomas. I don't know who he is. He just, I don't know. He keeps catching like 10 balls every week.
I
and 100
know
yards.
that the MVP race right now is pretty much a two-man race between Russ Wilson and Lamar.
And it's separating even
and
at
Lamar
that,
Jackson.
realistically.
But Christian McCaffrey and Michael Thomas, both in this game, definitely deserve honorable mentions.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I don't even know, even looking at Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson, I don't know if anybody has played as consistently as those two guys. And even so, I would almost lean towards Michael Thomas in the consistency factor. Now, that being said,
With and without Breeze continuing to just rock. Like
And we're-
100
right.
You're almost guaranteed at least 10 catches and 100 yards a week.
yeah, I
with
mean,
this
think
guy.
about this. He gets the best corner in every game for at least the majority of the game if you happen to play a zone or a side defense. But the simple fact of the matter is to go out there and catch 10 balls when everybody knows you're the guy is unbelievable. I don't care how good we've seen receivers. I've seen Odell in his best years get shut down. Julio gets shut down. Seen them all. And this guy is, I mean, Hopkins, look at Hopkins. I mean, Hopkins is as talented as him, but yet Hopkins has been shut down in games. I got to go back and look. I don't even know if he's been shut down once this year. And by shut down, I mean less than 6 or 7 catches,
No, he
less
has
than
not.
80 yards.
No, he is not.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. So I think what this really did is this, Carolina's in a little bit of trouble now because obviously losing this game, we talked about it last week. There's not a whole lot of shot at those wild card spots right now, just given the records. So Carolina was going to have to make some noise in the division. This pretty much puts New Orleans way out in front. I'd say now, I mean, this puts them in a pretty good driver's seat to finish the year with a top seed. Again, I would like to. New Orleans defense has concerned me over the last probably 3 to 4 weeks. Their last game was not too bad, but the 2 games before that and then this game, they are giving up points. That's going to matter. They're going to go, they really, and if there's a team that needs home field advantage in the playoffs, it's probably this team because they're not built to play in the elements as well as they play in that Superdome or Mercedes-Benz, whatever the hell they call it now. So, I like what I saw on offense. These are, the Panthers have weapons, but they have not been high-powered this year. They looked high-powered in this game.
They did. So final score, and it came down to a field goal at the end, and you don't want to leave any time on the clock for Mr. Breeze. Breeze goes 30 of 39, 311, 3 TDs, 1 pick, but that final under a minute drove them down the field, got themselves in field goal range, a lot due to, thank you, Mr. Michael Thomas, and they punched the field goal in by Lutz, and they win the game 34-31. They move to 9-2. Panthers go to 5-6. Panthers next week will head home. They get the Redskins coming off their first home win of the season, and for the Saints, they get to come here to Atlanta to take on the Falcons, who beat them 26-9 in New Orleans 2-3 weeks back. So they really need to get right. The Falcons did make a surge for a couple weeks. That ended.
There may be a little bit of payback in the minds of New Orleans because that's the worst they've looked all year by far.
Yep. So let's move on to the next game, and as we enter the evening, the afternoon, and then the Sunday and Monday night games, in the 4:00 slate Sunday, we had the Dallas Cowboys again battling the Eagles for NFC East supremacy. They roll into this game at 6-4. The Patriots, they go to Foxborough, to Gillette Stadium, take on the New England Patriots at 9-1. I think the spread on this was like 6.5 for the Patriots. And if you watch the game, Dallas had their chances. You can't trade field goals all game long with the GOAT. You just can't.
Yep.
And Dallas did have their shot at this thing, and they just couldn't seem to punch it in when they were in close or in the red zone. Credit the New England defense. We know they're good, and coming off a bye week, they I mean, Dallas can put points on the board. They were held to 9 points, and all those were field goals. Maher was busy.
Yep.
The Patriots offense, I know a lot of people are banging on them, a lot less than desirable. A mishmash of players, the running game, in particular Sony Michel, who they used a first-round pick on a couple years back, not getting it done at all. Brady, look, he's the GOAT. I don't care what you say, but everybody gets older and everybody declines. There is a little less zip on his ball. Yep. You can still don't get it twisted. That's a guy I would ride all the way through still.
Yeah.
I'd take him any day of the week. But the Patriots will, as they progress, they find a way. Good coaching, good players, good system. They'll find a way, and it's gonna really, as it's set up now. Them and the Ravens are at the top, and if that continues, maybe we'll see that rematch. We know how it went the first time. Ravens handled them, but don't think that's going to be the same outcome the second time. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, here's kind of these are the interesting things about it. We're going to get into Dallas a little bit deeper later on as we get into the good, the bad, the ugly. But as far as the Patriots, listen, I'll admit it. I said Tom Brady last year was getting old. I've admitted this, and I said things were not working well. And as soon as I really dug into one of my Patriot fan guys that I know, that's when Tom turned it on. It's about this time of year. This is usually where they get cranking. To see the Patriots win a game against another division leader, and Brady was clearly frustrated by where the offense is at. And something to me is, I don't mind that Edelman, it makes sense to have Edelman be the leading receiver in a game. But other than Edelman, everybody was sub 50% on their targets to receptions. This offense is in a funk. And when Brady's getting frustrated in a win, because this is a guy that's really truthfully all he cares about. But what I think he sees is we can't win the big ones, which is what he's all about, if the offense doesn't get going something fierce here. So this Patriots offense is worth watching. I mean, Sony Michel was probably the best player on the field offensively, and he was only 20 for 85 with no scores. I mean, Brady was sub 50% passing for only 190 yards. Did have a touchdown, no picks. But they've got some real concerns. And this is a team, you remember, they brought in N'Keal Harry and then let go of Josh Gordon. Obviously, the Antonio Brown audition was simply that, just an audition, and he was gone. Ben Watson has been picking it up as they've been trying to run through tight ends and find somebody to work. He had only one target, no catches. This is a team that's in an ugly situation, and their average, on these passes is just, it's ugly for them. So it bears watching. I'm more concerned about the fact that you generally don't get a reaction out of Tom Brady in a scenario like this if he feels like they're okay. He clearly doesn't feel like they're okay. And when the GOAT doesn't feel okay, I can't feel okay.
I hear you. All right, well, let's move on to the next game. Again, final there was 13-9. New England, they moved to 10-1. Dallas moves to 6-5. Next week, let's see, the Cowboys will travel home, and they'll get the Rams, the Rams, they're not very good. So Dallas needs to get themselves back on track. And for the Patriots, they have to travel next week, and they get to go to Houston to take on Deshaun Watson and Texans, as you mentioned earlier. So that's a game where, the Patriots defense needs to do their thing, but the offense could get on track because Houston's defense isn't that good. And if Houston does put points on the board, New England will have to keep up. So it'll be interesting to see this week if that offense for New England comes to life a little bit.
Yep.
Next game, Sunday Night Football. The Green Bay Packers travel to San Francisco to take on the 49ers, who are sitting at the top of the NFC with a 9-1 record going into this game. Aaron Rodgers coming off not a great week the week before, bye before that. Expected him to come off a bye slinging last week. Wasn't really that. So definitely thought this game under the lights, prime time, and where they're sitting at was a game where he could show off.
Yeah,
But he
understand
didn't.
he's going back home. You know,
Yep.
he's a California boy,
Oh,
played
yeah.
at Cal. So you had all those things, and he went 20 of 33, 104 yards.
Just not
if
Aaron Rodgers-esque.
Oh, I am alarmed at 5.2 yard average for him. Like that is concerning at this time of year with an offense that's been pretty explosive. I mean, his longest pass play was 15 yards to a running back.
Yep.
So
They couldn't get it going on the ground. Aaron Jones, their lead back, 13 carries, 38 yards. That was it. Their backup running back, Jamal Williams, had 11 carries for 45 yards. Also had 7 receptions for 35 yards. Devontae Adams, 7 for 43 in a TD. He got a little more involved. But you're right, I would be alarmed because it's just not Aaron Rodgers-esque. Obviously, the final score, San Francisco 37, Green Bay 8. So they couldn't get it going at all. And I'll be honest, that is they're still for real, San Francisco. Their defense is still for real. That defensive front, and Aaron Rodgers, even though he's not the runner or the super scrambler, he knows how to scramble out of the pocket and keep the eyes downfield and make things happen. I think they showed a stat in the game that was something ridiculous. It was just like, when he has those plays, he's just like, almost a perfect passer rating or something nonsense.
yeah, I got to
But that said, that he was under duress by this defense and couldn't escape it.
All I got to say to you is
you could see the frustration. You could see even when he was able to scramble out of the pocket, collapsing and still have time. The defensive backs did a good job holding up, and he had nothing, and he was getting frustrated, dude. You could see him. He got on the sideline with head coach LaFleur, and he was just like, yep.
This was a game of thumpkin in my mind. It was Nicky Bosa, where are you? I'm in the Packers backfield. Wait a minute, it's Eric Armstead. Where are you? This game was nuts with these guys. They were everywhere. There's no defending this front seven right now. I've been off the Niners all year because I'm an idiot. They showed it this game. I mean, they came from everywhere. Armstead was all over the place. They were doing everything to stop Nick Bosa, and there was no answer anywhere else.
Yep.
And Bosa still got a tackle for loss and a sack in this game. Armstead was awesome. He was blowing it up through the middle. Warner got a sack. I mean, it was just craziness. Buckner had a half sack. They come at you from everywhere, and the simple fact is,
Warner's incredible, by the way. They're inside linebacker.
Love him. Just a tackling machine.
Yeah, I mean, dude, there were plays that Aaron Jones, they did a little, maybe a little play action, or they ran the ball, but then they'd play action out of it. But then they would, it looked like a play action, but it was really a handoff. And Aaron Jones had a hole. He'd go through the hole, and before he got past the lineman, Warner was just, laying wood. Coming in there, laying wood single-handedly, and don't need anyone else to help him. He was handling that backfield by himself.
This is how you got to win in the playoffs, like what they're doing. If San Francisco follows this type of script, and they didn't run a lot, but they ran well. I mean, Mostert had a touchdown.
Their offense wasn't exploding sans the one play deep ball to Kittle.
But
Kittle gets back fully healthy in this game, and you show what their offense
caught them
does
all
with
to
him
129
there
yards. Yep.
They have been a little, not as great the past couple weeks with him not playing and banged up, and then he comes back, and all of a sudden, here we go again.
Well, I think what's really interesting is Emmanuel Sanders has not blown up as the receiver. We figured this is a team that was really void of receivers coming in the year, but I give him the ultimate assist because a guy that has, even though he's not getting a ton of catches, that has shown up and been big play is Deebo Samuel. It's like it's opened up the field. He's the over-the-top opportunity for them. They obviously can go underneath and everywhere around. Yeah, but I'm just saying, they were able to, this kid was very, very questionable early in the year, which most rookies will be, but he has really come on. The stat line you want to see is Garoppolo, 14 of 20, 253, 2 touchdowns. You do that as a quarterback, you run the ball effectively, and let that defense eat. There's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be hurting to handle this team going forward, and I love it. I got to say, the only thing that sucks is that probably the two best teams I'm looking at right now are probably in the NFC are the Seahawks and the Niners, and they're in the same division. They are just unbelievable.
It would be neither of us had either of these teams in our Super Bowl prediction, but you look at where it sits now, San Francisco, Baltimore. That could be a pretty good matchup with San Francisco's D.
It's a little bit of a repeat of a recent Super Bowl. We need Harbaugh to come back, and then we can have the Harbaugh brothers going against each other.
So let's move into Harbaugh and his team for our last game of the day as the Baltimore Ravens traveled west to take on the Los Angeles Rams.
Woo. Well, I'm not shocked by what Baltimore did. I mean, because
every time they were on offense, scored, and not just scored, but scored a touchdown?
Nobody's got an answer for
every
this Lamar Jackson
single
offense.
Drive on offense, they scored a touchdown while Lamar Jackson was in there.
Yep. Yeah.
Every single one.
And look at this. Again, 15 to 20, 169 yards. Ho-hum. 5 frickin' scores. Not to mention 8 for 95 on the ground, so he's doing that. Mark Ingram. We thought he was the touchdown-dependent guy to have a fantasy day.
He's running with a purpose.
Yeah, he is starting to run with an attitude we haven't seen in a while. They've got enough weapons, but the simple fact is, here, I'm going to say this. The defenses are going to figure out Lamar Jackson eventually. Yeah. I'm not saying well enough where he won't be good.
There were a couple runs he had where I was a little concerned about him when he got tackled.
That's something I noticed in the game. That was one thing that concerned me. As I've talked about this, he's run smart and protected himself. I'm going to say this I don't want to blow it up, but I do want to make note of it. He is starting to play like he knows nobody can catch him and nobody can handle him. And with that comes a little bit of risk. And I saw Michael Vick do this. I'm a little concerned. I don't want this guy to start becoming injury prone because, honestly, for him, when you're 12, 13 yards past the first down marker, just go out of bounds. You don't need those extra 2-3 yards. Everything's, here's the thing I'm concerned about. He's using all this shake and bake. It takes one knee injury and you don't ever do that quite the same again. Not that you're not effective, but they need to be careful of that. But I got to tell you, he's so fun to watch right now. He is just out of his mind good.
Well, and this is the difference. I know there's the comparisons with Vic from his legs perspective, and I understand that. But in my mind, there is a night and day difference between those two. And
I'd agree with you.
And that is size. Michael Vick, not weight, size. Michael Vick wasn't that tall.
No, he's only a 6-footer.
You're talking about, I don't care what you say. And there are a few guys that buck the norm, a la Russell Wilson, Drew Brees. But don't get it twisted. Much better in my mind to have that tall quarterback to see over the big uglies, especially in the day and age of the read option, the run-pass option, to be able to have your eyes not just on that defensive end, but to be able to look, see over the line or in your periphery, and he has a quick release. So it's, he can just, and it's, again, the yardage passing wise isn't huge. He doesn't need to. There's always a guy open because he can see over it and see the defense clearly. And that is a huge difference that Michael Vick did not have, that I feel like Vick would resort to scrambling much quicker and much more than this guy. I do believe that this guy prefers to pass the ball.
Yeah, let me just say this. Of course, everybody will think, we're always comparing Lamar Jackson to Michael Vick because it's the black quarterback. It's all, all these things. That really has very little to do with it. I would say what makes them the same and why I compare them, and this is really where, in my mind, the comparison ends. Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson, when they stepped on the field in their youth, Lamar Jackson's doing it now, and Michael Vick, when he was with the Atlanta Falcons early on in his career, was the best athlete out on the field every time they stepped on the field. That's the kind of the comparison. And when you are that much more talented than everybody else, you can be risky with some of the things that you do with your body. And that's my only comparison. What I will tell you is Lamar Jackson is a much smarter passing quarterback than Michael Vick ever was. Michael Vick loved the 60-yard, just chuck it all game long. He wanted to do that. Lamar Jackson's okay with check down stuff. He's okay with doing that because he can extend a play for an extra couple of seconds every time so his guy can get that much more open, whereas a guy would be catching a pass, like his tight end, for example, catching a pass in tight coverage, catch the ball and go down. Those extra 2 seconds that he is playing smart with gets that guy 2-3 more yards of separation, and he runs for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more yards per run, and that's what makes him incredibly special. I don't compare him for any other reason than that. I will always be worried about an athletic quarterback if they start to get risky with their body. One of the things I love about Russell Wilson, who is not as athletically gifted, but he is pretty damn athletic, but he's not as athletically gifted as Lamar Jackson is, Russell's pretty good about protecting his body. And that's longevity, because here, I want you to think about something. Quarterback comes in, plays really well, blows out his knee one year. All of a sudden, not only is he out for that year and he gets away from football, the next year he's unsure on his knee and he becomes the passer. You start, if Lamar Jackson is a pure pocket passer, he's not as good as he is right now, not even close. And that's just a reality. You can just look at him. Like, if he had to sit in the pocket and throw 35 times and has to, always go, be able to, move around within the pocket, he would not be as good. That's part of his gift. And so my thing is, then you start to lose confidence, and that is the worst thing a quarterback can ever have, is damaged confidence. Again, I wish none of that on him. It's not to say he can't learn to do all that stuff, but it's very hard to do that. And you remember, Michael Vick started getting hurt a lot, and then he was forced to be more of a pocket passer, and he wasn't very good. Again, I think Lamar Jackson's smarter. I just want him to protect himself. Because teams are going to want to take him off the field, not just shut him down. Because he's so friggin' dangerous.
You'll see, late hits, somebody just trying to get him hurt and get him out of the game.
But if Lamar Jackson can maintain this for a few years, he can evolve as a passer and start to change his game as he slows down. I just don't want to see something happen where it's an injury. But right now, they are brutal to play against. Their defense is really getting teed up. They're looking a lot more like the old school.
Yeah, they weren't
Baltimore
for a while,
defense.
but they are now. I would agree. I would agree.
And I'd say just here on the Rams side, Rams. I'm gonna make a prediction.
They had their full complement of receivers back.
I'm with you. I'm gonna say this to you, and you can put this one up on the board for bold predictions. McVay will be fired within the next 2 years.
No.
And here's why. Their quarterback is terrible. Their offensive game plans have been awful. The bigger problem is they have serious salary cap issues. They are going to start to lose some of this talent. They just sold their souls to get Ramsey. I mean, you're going to have to re-up them to justify that trade. They're going to have so much money tied into that defense. I don't know what they're going to do. And I think if this team was a Super Bowl and then all of a sudden next year, this team could be like a 4-12 team next year. They can't get worse personnel-wise, and they're going to, because they can't afford all these guys. They're going to lose Fowler. They just pay. They're going to have the second highest paid defensive player in Aaron Donald, and then they're going to pay Ramsey the big money. They're going to get worse. They better draft like champs. And then what do you do with the quarterback situation? Because you can't go out and go get Bridgewater and pay all that money. Bridgewater's going to get a fortune. And I will tell you, and I think that's going to lead him. Look, Goff was 26 of 37 for 212 yards
it was
and
ugly,
2
man.
picks. But that's him.
I know.
That's been him.
I know.
So anyway.
There's
my bold prediction.
Yep. There's a lot of talent on that Rams roster, and it just seems to be going to waste. You can send some of it to the New York Giants. Thank you. That will wrap up NFL Week 12's recap. We'll go ahead and dice it up, cut it up, and we'll jump right back on here to hit the good, the bad, and the ugly. Stay tuned.